Hello, my beautiful friends and fellow space blobs. I'm feeling so inspired by the Virgo archetype right now, and I'm very excited to be having this chat with you all today. I think this is one of those entry points to reintroducing beauty and magic into our lives and kind of coming back into the mystical world again. This is one of the best archetypes and seasons to do that and to do some exploring. And I think this is also just a really fun archetype to bring back into its full power. So today we are just going to get ourselves set up for this beautiful Virgo season. I love Virgo energy. If you couldn't already tell by the way I'm talking about it in this initial chat, I happen to have a Virgo moon and I have a lot of beloved Virgo energy in my life. So this is always a sign that brings me back to kind of a home frequency of beauty and care and tenderness and intuition, actually. Even though this sign is often associated with analyzing and control, this is actually one of the most intuitive signs that we can work with. So we're going to run through some of the things that have been inspiring me most about Virgo energy, getting ourselves situated with this archetype, playing around with some ideas that have to do with Virgo energy. I'm going to be exploring some of the themes for this particular Virgo season and giving us some of the big movements going on when it comes to astrology this month or this season. And we will finish with some intuitive card reading as always. And really my goal for this space is going to be just to feel like we can enter into the season, the sacredness of it, the beauty of it, and feel that kind of luminous magic in our lives. That's something I'm going to be working on a lot with you all as we move through these next months. In fact, in October, we are going to be doing a series about re-entering the creative mystic space and how we do that gently and softly and open and bloom. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be over on my Patreon. So if you are looking for support as we go into the darker months, at least up here in the Northern Hemisphere, I would literally love to see you for that. But with all of that said, let's get into this Virgo season and why it is inspiring me so much. Virgo is the mutable earth sign. So it is this beautiful bridge between summer and autumn. And that is maybe one of my favorite combinations of energies to be intermingling and exploring. Mutable energy is always how we transition from season to season. And Virgo really holds this beautiful threshold space between this harvest energy that we start off Virgo season with. Often, the harvest full moon will often happen in Virgo season. This year it's happening during that Pisces full moon at the very end of August. And by the time we enter the end of Virgo season, we're starting to enter into really mystic spaces. So Virgo is a really beautiful bridge between physical and spiritual and really holds this beautiful spot. Now, Virgo is also ruled by Mercury, as most of you probably already know. And a lot of times Virgo gets associated with analyzing and attention to detail and being able to kind of tear things apart and see all the details within them. As someone with a Virgo moon, I guess I can relate to that sometimes. However, the true power of Virgo energy, especially when it has been kind of liberated from some of its scaffolding and some of the things that our culture thinks of as important, is one of the most intuitive signs when it comes to the soul and the spirit. Even this idea of Virgo, that word, this idea of the virgin or the maiden is really complex. There's a lot of layers going on there. I won't be able to address all of them. But really, when we think of virgin, we're thinking of something that is whole, something that it belongs to itself, something that is not fragmented or disempowered. In fact, there are some discussions in the etymology of the word virgin that this could actually have to do with strength and independence. So it's an interesting word. It's one that there's different ways that it has been analyzed and explored. However, we can really think about this also as finding empowerment and coming home to ourselves, lighting that internal lantern and feeling the power of that. If we think about the tarot card that's associated with Virgo, it is the Hermit. And that's another archetype that's often disempowered. We think of that as, oh, well, I'm just supposed to go sit at home and never do anything again. But Virgo energy is about a deep wisdom, the lighting of an internal lantern that allows us to move through life with intention and clarity and not just getting pulled by the currents of the world or the currents of the people around us or by influencing being influenced by our peers or what we think we should be doing. So when Virgo's liberated, this is kind of a powerful energetic because it's associated with Mercury and because it's an energetic that has to do with moving between worlds too. This is a sign that allows us to move between the subconscious, the conscious, and the greater consciousness, also the underworld, the flowering world, and the celestial heavens. Virgo energy is often connected with energetics that have to do with women and goddesses who move through different forms of being. So she's also really tied to death and rebirth, despite the fact that she's not Scorpio and all of that. So, and you can imagine this is an archetype that it's very convenient to be disempowered in our culture, right? Because what's scarier to power dynamics than somebody who belongs to themselves and moves freely through memory, through energy, through the world. So if we're just focusing on the obsessive control element of Virgo that we often see as the stereotype of people with Virgo energy, yeah, it's disempowered. When we think about it as this intuitive ability to move through multiple layers of the world, something else happens and we start to access, I think, a really, really beautiful part of Virgo's energy. And with that in mind, let's talk about what the stereotype is for Virgo, right? We'll often hear that this is about high standards, nitpicking, being uptight, overthinking, rigid, secretly devious, and wanting to control things. I think this is also a somewhat gendered conversation, let's be real, with this whole idea of not liking somebody who has a clear idea of who they are and how they move through the world, wanting to kind of damp that down, especially for certain demographics in the world. And I think that's really interesting when we're thinking about stereotypes. So, what are some of the themes for this particular Virgo season? Because every Virgo season has its own energetic feel, and every year it's a little different. This year is really truth-bringing. It's a very honest season. So one of the first themes that came up to me when I started to feel through this August and September season was, what are you trying to force to fit you, or force to move forward, or force to make happen? This is a really interesting place to just explore places of resistance. And it's not even necessarily to say, oh, you should stop resisting, or you should totally refocus your path, perhaps. But I think it's most interesting just to notice where we have resistance or where we feel like we're pushing against our own intuitive knowing. I think that can be a really interesting place for exploration. And as we start paying attention to actually hearing, actually noticing how in our physical bodies there is this sensation of maybe resistance, we can make adjustments in ways that feel really good. And that's another thing I didn't mention yet about Virgo energy, right? It's an earth sign. And it's an earth sign that bridges between the spiritual and physical, and it's on the Virgo-Pisces axis, which is all about healing and reconnecting to the intuitive tools of our body. So with that idea of kind of what are you trying to force, what are you kind of trying to make happen, listening to our bodies, actually hearing what's there. Is there resistance? And if so, is it okay for us to acknowledge it and maybe listen to it? Maybe make movements based on what our body is telling us. Virgo is also tied to the gut and to the digestive system. And we all know that that's another brain in our body. It's very deeply tied to our nervous system and our ability to tell things and to regulate mood. So it's also a really great time to check in with that aspect of ourselves. Along with that, I think the follow-up question is, what are we really dreaming of? This season is going to be asking that, differentiating and discerning between the dreams of those around us, the dreams that maybe our parents hold for us, or our colleagues, or other influential people in our lives, and what we're actually dreaming. The dreams of our culture, and what we're actually dreaming of, redefining that for ourselves and getting really, really honest with this, which I think can be a really vulnerable exploration. It can feel a little bit exposed and a little bit tender. So I think this is an interesting one to come back to. I have to come back to this one all the time and kind of check, are the dreams that I am putting into my daydreaming really mine? How do they feel in my body when I'm doing them? Does it feel kind of mechanical? and like I'm dreaming the things I'm supposed to dream, or is it feeling a little bit more organic? I think one of my favorite themes about this particular Virgo season is going to have a lot to do with deeply integrating how we have changed so far this year and how we have changed since Pisces season back in February and March. Integrating how we've changed, accepting how we've changed, feeling how we have changed. That's going to be a theme I think that will show up time and again. There's going to be a lot of retrograde energy during this Virgo season, which I love. I kind of live in retrograde. I think that's my modality. So this is just a time of deep integration, and that doesn't mean we don't have to move. We can't move, or we can't make decisions, or we can't try things in life. It just means that we may be taking some energy to check in with those changes and to start to calibrate to some new thoughts and ideas. And finally, this one is so beautiful. I think it brings us back to a really simple, sweet, basic, but not always easy practice, which is practicing opening and receiving. I think Virgo energy, one of the beautiful aspects of it that we often don't think of, which when we're thinking of it being analytical and controlling, right? That kind of surface level obsession with what we think of as Virgo. When we take that away, Virgo is really about being open to receiving, really releasing our control and coming back into our intuitive wisdom, and how that actually gives us this deep power to move through life. So those are the themes that I started to pick up with for this particular Virgo season. It's a really great time of discernment, illumination, clarity, honesty, and being very real with ourselves in how we've changed and what we actually want. So I'm really looking forward to that. Let's get into the little astrology aspects that are happening and transits that are happening during this Virgo season. The Virgo season begins around August 23rd, and right as Virgo season begins, we have a Mercury retrograde in Virgo, in the same sign. I really love this Mercury retrograde. I love Mercury retrograde in general. It's in its home sign here of Virgo. I have a whole video out about that if you want to learn a little bit more about what this Mercury retrograde is feeling like and how to work with it. But it's a season of nourishment for soul and body, and it's stepping off the treadmill, and it's stepping off the pushing to force ourselves to understand how our story makes sense and releasing that need for control. I often say that this is a season of stepping out of linear time as well. So between the beginning of Virgo season until September 15th, so the vast majority of Virgo season, we're going to be exploring this Mercury retrograde and how life isn't always about accomplishing a straight line, and coming back to those curving undulations and going back and forth between old dreams and new dreams, visiting old haunted houses and coming back into new dreams. All of this will be happening. We don't have to fit it into a perfect puzzle. Of course, this is also going to be a season that is beginning while we are still moving through Venus retrograde as well, and that won't station direct until September 3rd. So we're also continuing to integrate how we value beauty and creativity and heart and courage in our lives as well. And if you want to join in the whole process of Venus retrograde, once again, my Patreon, we are doing a 7-week series. You can join at any time. You could binge watch the whole series and have a whole heyday with all the journaling and exploring that we have there. So if you're looking for support, you know where to find me. So yes, this season is introspective. It is integrative. Now, we also have Mars leaving Virgo and entering Libra. Really interesting combo on August 27th. Mars in Libra is a funny combo. Mars is obviously this kind of traditionally described as masculine energy. In Libra, a Venus-ruled sign. But I think for me, this is the motivation to have deeper communication, really great conversations. So this is adding another layer to this Virgo season of deep conversing, deep exploration, finding connection with those around us, finding connection with ourselves, and really being courageous enough to ask those questions. That's going to be a theme for the rest of the Virgo season as soon as Mars enters Libra. On August 28th, Uranus in Taurus is going to move retrograde for about 5 months. And this is such a great time. Uranus is this mover and shaker. How are we changing? How are we growing? How are we morphing into new versions of ourselves? Asking all those big, bold, juicy questions in Taurus, as it has been for the last several years. With the retrograde, this is a great time to integrate and honor just how much we've changed. Like, think about all the pieces of your life that you have moved around and shifted and asked questions about and explored. Honor that. Just honoring that is so powerful. And I think Uranus retrograde gives us a chance to catch up with our own moving and shaking in the world and all the changes we made. It allows us to bring it back into the body a little bit more, integrate it into our day-to-day lives, and make it a more stable part of how we move through the world. Love that. We close out August around August 30th and into the 31st with the harvest moon, the full moon in Pisces. I will have a chat out about that very, very soon, if not already, if you're watching this a little bit later. So this is a full moon that is quite closely aligned to Saturn in Pisces and is really about feeling feelings and dreaming dreams. And I'm really, really excited about it. I think in general, this is a very supportive moon. It is asking us to get a little uncomfortable in thinking about if we want to live closer to our soul, we're going to probably have to leave some comfort zones for the analytical controlling part of our mind and enter into some spaces that are new or uncomfortable. And that's going to be an exploration we'll be doing. And like I said, there will be a whole chat about that. And then we enter into September. What a month. So Venus stations direct in Leo on September 3rd, finishing 6 weeks of this beautiful retrograde that started on July 22nd. So this is going to be, I often actually do find that when Venus stations retrograde, I'll often have some really great insights right away. But I also think that Venus retrograde, it requires a little bit of integration. So take your time with this. You don't have to expect to understand everything that's elapsed for you if you have happened to feel Venus retrograde quite powerfully. It might take some time before you really understand what that season was all about, but often we will have moments of insight and clarity and aha that come through. So at the beginning of September, I think we're going to start to feel like we're moving into some new chapters and timelines in our lives. And then the next day, September 4th, we have Jupiter in Taurus moving retrograde. And this is about doing, right? So we had Uranus in Taurus move retrograde. Right after, we have Jupiter in Taurus moving retrograde. And in all you're doing since May, when Jupiter first entered Taurus, what has felt true? What has felt like you could keep doing it? And what has felt less true? What has felt less connected to you? These questions will be coming up kind of the rest of this year with Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. And I'm planning on doing another video too about Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus and just some of the energetics that are going on there as we move into September. So keep an eye out for that. And then on September 14th into the 15th, we have a new moon in Virgo that's also happening the same time. Mercury stations direct. This new moon in Virgo is trining our newly retrograde Uranus and is asking to give us some knowing. And you know, when you know something, you can't unknow it. This is going to be a moment of that with Mercury station direct and the new moon in Virgo happening. That knowing could be really, really strong. Acknowledging how you've changed, acknowledging what you need to go forward and just do and accept and embody is going to be really strong. So give yourself a big breath. The last week of Virgo season is going to be really about that energy. And that's really the last big moment that we're going to be having. And then on September 22nd, the sun will move on into Libra. So those are the big juicy things happening for this Virgo season. Let's get into the intuitive section of this chat. So this is a pretty powerful and intuitive Virgo season. And I think that's the thing that I would say about entering into the season. Go toward your gut feelings, go toward your intuition. Maybe even kind of think about that being the guiding light for the season, just giving ourselves that little bit of, okay, I am going to just listen to all those cues, to everything, all that information that's coming in, and move accordingly. If I realize I'm hitting that energy wall, take a reset. If I realize that I have a need, let somebody know. If I realize that something is really not connecting with me, have a conversation about it, write it down in a journal. Just letting what we know be known is really powerful. Four of Cups. This is a funny energy. It's been coming up a lot in my work recently. And I think it's because, like I mentioned, Virgo season is a threshold season. We start in kind of this harvest energy, the end of summer, and we end really entering the spiritual season of the year, the deep, deep spirituality of the late part of the year. And with that comes this shifting of awareness. Five of Pentacles. So perfect for Virgo season. And I actually love when this card comes up because so many of us have Five of Pentacles energy that is an important part of our experience in this life and something that we all work with. So love to talk about that. And by the way, I'm pulling 4 cards. So kind of one for approximately each week. So kind of the process of this season. Ace of Pentacles. There you go. That's it. This is it. This is the 5 of Pentacles into the Ace of Pentacles for me is so connected. It makes all the sense in the world. Let's wait for one more card to come through in our chat today. An Ace of Swords. Wow. There it is. We start with the 4 of Cups and 5 of Pentacles. We end with 2 aces. What more could you ask for? So yeah, let's talk about this. 4 of Cups. This is a bridge energy. This is a bridging between 2 worlds. When you think about the numbers 1, 2, and 3, those are all about the initial creative process, right? The bringing together of 2 items. First, you have a single being, then you bring together 2 ideas, and you have a third creation that comes out of bringing those 2 things together, and you've had this whole creative cycle. And then 4 is this next integrating place. This is where we go when we are integrating something we have just created and moved through. Here you can see him looking at those 3 cups, integrating, and we might feel frustrated. We might feel like this is not enough. A lot of times that's how people see this card. But the thing is that what's really going on in this picture, we're integrating and preparing for receiving. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to judge ourselves in this phase because culturally, we don't talk about this. Culture does not give us this part of the storyline. They do not give us the integration. And these aren't the big cocoon moments necessarily. These are the cocoon moments that happen in a week, that happen on that day where you just can't get anything done. That might happen for a little while too, depending on what you're doing in life. I've had big old cocoon moments several times in the last year. And it's a huge part of the journey. It also suggests that something's about to open. And what we're doing is we're calibrating and preparing for that. Now, part of that work, part of that exploration is going to be this 5 of Pentacles, right? And this is such an important card and actually brings me back to why I'm getting really inspired by Virgo season and very excited for our October series on Patreon about re-entering spirit and intuition and creativity, because this card really represents when we feel like we have gotten far away from feeling like we're close to spirit, close to that universal bigness, close to our soul song, close to that feeling of belonging in the world, close to that sense of openness and receptivity and intuition. That's what 5 of Pentacles really represents, that feeling of being cast out. How do we get back into the beauty again? And it's okay to be here. We're going to come here time and again and feel this, and it's not always fun, that's for sure. But there's also something really beautiful here, because if we can have compassion for the fact that part of being human and part of coming into the world and feeling this sense of individual experience brings about these feelings of feeling cast out, of feeling far from our soul, far from God, spirit. And when this is here, it's a moment of compassion. It's a moment of recognizing that we have a lot of core values. A lot of us have been taught to kind of cut ourselves off, and that's okay. but we can always invite this part of ourselves back to something beautiful. And that's all that's really being asked here. It's being asked here, do we want to let this be the leading story? Or do we want to offer it compassion and allow it to be a part of us that doesn't lead, but instead follows along into the beauty, back into the warmth again? So caring for that is really beautiful. Caring for our most tender, vulnerable parts when we're growing and changing is a prerequisite to being able to hold anything larger next. And that's what the 4 and 5 here in this reading are all about. If you want to open to the next things and receive those next exciting elements in your life, you're going to have to start practicing your capacity to hold it. And that is going to mean taking care of the parts of yourself that are scared of holding it or don't feel ready. So with that in mind, let's finish off this chat today with our two aces, the Ace of Pentacles and the Ace of Swords. For me, Ace of Pentacles is, the physical confirmation of when we're on the right path, like feeling that connection to our bodies, giving us that information. Ace of Swords, clarity of knowing. And there's just this clearness that comes in here at the end of Virgo season, this beautiful knowing, this beautiful connection. I often feel like at the end of this season, a lot of times some pieces start to click. And I think that we'll be seeing that as we come to the conclusion of Virgo season and we get a little bit closer to Libra season. A lot of us are going to be feeling that we'll understand what we've just been through, why that happened the way that it did, and how we're going to work with it moving forward. And with that, as always, these season chats end up being so much longer than I ever plan on them being, because I just get so excited about the archetypes and the ideas and offering that support as we move into each new season. It just gets me very excited. Like I mentioned, I love having you here. We have so much we are going to be doing. I'm going to be taking you on some adventures here in Scandinavia as it gets darker and more intense. I'm also going to just be offering a lot of creative support as we go into this darker part of the year. I am also going to be offering up so much beauty over on Patreon. Venus retrograde still going on if you want to join me there, but also our October creativity series. You can join on any tier and it's super easy to join. You can come and go as you please. Love to see you there. And you can also find me on my Instagram and website if you're curious to learn more about me. I love you all so much. Have a beautiful, beautiful Virgo season, and I will see you very soon for our next chat.